Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
The following is an independently produced program. The views and opinions expressed are entirely those of the producer and do not reflect those of Falls Area Community Television, its staff, or board of directors. Take a deep breath. Remember this is public access and carry on.
Secrets in the shadows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret got beneath the undertow. Honor stories hidden in the glass. On this long road, in the truth we trust.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. We're going to talk about money. What is it going to cost us as American people? And how much are we willing to spend? And some of the political consequences when we go and say, oh yeah, this is a great idea. And what happens? Okay, right now when I came in and I checked my phone before it died, the federal debt was at trillion, $995 billion. So probably sometime tomorrow or maybe Friday, we will cross the United States, we'll cross the $37 trillion mark in federal debt. But before you worry about, that's a lot of federal debt and it's just going higher, just think by Christmas, that $37 trillion debt limit will be something in the past as it crosses the $38 trillion mark. And by the end of the second year as Donald Trump being president, it should cross the $40 trillion mark. And it will continue to go on and on until something happens. The Federal Reserve stated they did not lower the prime interest rate today. It will still stay at 4.25%, but they're projecting 2 decreases going forward. Okay, so say they give 2 quarter decreases. So maybe you don't have to spend 31% on your credit card. All you would have to do is spend 30.5% interest on your credit card. That interest rate, 4.25, that has no effect on your home mortgage. Your home mortgage is based on the 10-year bond that the Treasury bond that the federal government tries to sell. And the interest that's being demanded on that is still high. I think last time I looked, it was at like 4.66. And I don't see it going down. Why would it go down? Because like if we have a credit card, the higher our balances go on all our credit cards, the lower our credit score goes and our interest rates that we have to pay on our debt goes up. The federal government is no different. Okay. And yesterday, the Congressional Budget Office went and looked at all the numbers and changes because they've been looking at the bill. And the people are really kind of sick. What happened? The House Republican, according to Congressional Budget Office, where you have Representative Arlington of Texas, chairman of the House Budget Committee, recently told the Washington Post, you have some that say it's going to save trillions, and you have, say, others that it's going to add trillions. Well, that just about covers it. They're playing as an ignorant fool because that's politics going back and forth. And you know what about politics? We believe what we're told as long as it's told by our side. The Congressional Budget Office, which is objective, nonpartisan, provided the lawmakers with revised information about the overall cost of the GOP's reconciliation bill. The House Republican sprawling package to cut taxes and slash federal safety net programs will add about $3.4 trillion to the debt, according to the non-partisan congressional analysis, who reported on Tuesday that minor gains in economic growth under the bill will not offset its full fiscal impact. So when you have people who are saying is, you've got this bill, we get this bill, the economy will increase, and if the economy increases, we're able to collect more taxes, so that will support it. Okay. The updated findings from the Congressional Budget Office accounts to yet another Dura report card for the presidential signature legislation, which passed the House last month, but now faced the prospect of significant revision in its core components in the Senate. That was a quote from the New York Times. At this point, I know some readers are thinking, hold on, you're saying, didn't you just publish a post 2 weeks ago that the Republican legislation would add $2.4 trillion to national debt? Is the actual number $2.4 trillion or $3.4 trillion? Okay, think of that. I've just got done saying, based on what we're doing and what the federal government is spending right now, without increases, without decreases, is basically adding about $1 trillion to the federal debt every year, every 6 months. And so, at this rate, one of the things they've stated that by 2029, our debt could be $46 trillion. In 4 years, we could be looking at $46 trillion in debt. In 10 years, we could be looking at $54 trillion in debt. So what the Congressional Budget Office is saying is if we do nothing and we keep everything the same, in 2034, the federal government will be $54 trillion in debt. $54 trillion in debt. But what the people are arguing about is 2.4 trillion, 3.4 trillion. 2.4 trillion, 3.4 trillion. So, what they're arguing right now about is 10 years from now, is the federal government, if the bill passes, will the federal government be $56 trillion in debt or $57 trillion in debt? Do you know if it's $57 trillion in debt and say $9 trillion of our debt right now is bought by countries overseas? Okay? 9 trillion. And the way it's going now is people don't want to buy American debt because American has the ability to sanction anything that's in dollar signs. So we're going to take it right away. We're going to sanction it, like they did with Russia and Iran and some of these other countries. So that's what's arguing back and forth. And so really the only way to get out, well, there's a couple ways. You can default, okay? But that's going to cause a lot of problems, significant problems, financial headaches for every single person in the United States. Two, the federal government can basically say, wait a minute, you know what? We're not responsible for anything that goes on in the state. Like the president saying he wants to get rid of FEMA because these natural disasters are the state's problems. Okay? Hey, the Constitution only says the federal government's responsible for three things. You know, the federal government's not responsible for schools, hospitals, all kinds of stuff like this. Those are the state's responsibilities, but the federal government has been pouring money in those over the years. Okay? The other way is inflation. If inflation went up to 10% like it did in the late 70s, early 80s with the oil embargo and some of those shocks, if I have a $50 trillion debt, 10% inflation would wipe out 5% a year. Bingo. Then I could go through basically holy hell for 5, 6, 7 years and then basically get my debt down to a manageable thing. But either way, it's going to cost you and I. Nothing is free. The price for the free lunches is coming back. It's coming. And what you can do is you can go back to 2008 when we had the big recession, the Great Recession, where the Federal Reserve basically lowered the interest rates down to zero, and then people in Congress and a lot of people in businesses which are now going bankrupt and everything says, hey, you know what? We can borrow all this kind of money and pay 0.5% interest, 1% interest. It'd be a no-brainer to borrow. So they borrowed and borrowed and borrowed, and holy crap, interest rates went up. So we're going to pay. That's going to cost you. Now let's go to the next cost. Well, we've been told over and over again, President Trump was elected to get rid of as many illegal aliens as possible. We want to clean out the United States of illegal aliens. He wants to get rid of the rapists, the murderers, the pedophiles, all these other people. No problem at all. Everybody agrees. Get rid of them. Send them home. Well, in the big picture, there isn't very many that fit that category. When I'm talking millions and millions and millions of illegal aliens, okay? But President Trump's man, Steve Miller, wants 3,000 a day, which I don't think they've ever met. But basically, they've said, you know what? If you can't get me my 3,000 a day, you're going to be replaced. And a couple of people in the hierarchy have already been replaced. So now, hey, we got to go. We have to go to where they are. Oh, Omaha, which I talked about last week when they went and raided a meatpacking plant and they took off 76 illegal migrant workers and they've sent them on their way. Some of them are already out of the country. Some of them are in detention centers. And today the news came out that company is shutting down. It can't get the people to work, to replace people. So it's shutting down. And so it's out of business. Well, which I had the one here. Now people are complaining is, ICE is raiding meat packing plants. ICE is raiding farms. ICE is going where we have known for years, where illegal aliens have been working, where owners and other places have been taking advantage of these individuals. Well, now in California, the farms are only working at about 30% capacity. So that means there's going to be fruit and vegetables rotting in the field. Like this guy goes, we want to reiterate, we only hire U.S. citizens on our farm and in our meat packing plant, Meriwether Farms posted. Most small operations like us rely on family members, hire local, or on rare occasions use legal and seasonal visa programs. The recent order released by the Department of Homeland Security regarding ICE raids will only benefit big packers and big agri who exploit illegal labor, which they do. Some of these, there was a couple of chicken farms, big companies, where some of their VPs were sent to prison years ago because their job was to get as many illegal aliens as possible so they could cut corners, save money, don't pay work bumps, all kinds of stuff, so we could get our chicken nuggets at McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever at a very low price. One farmer saying he showed up to work in the morning and he had 0 workers there. crops rotting in the field. So you have crops rotting in the field. You have these small meat packing plants that are not producing the meat. And meat prices are already high. So, and beef stocks, livestock are low. And so it's shrinking and shrinking. So the cost of that steak is just going to go higher and higher. The cost of those vegetables are just going to go higher and higher. And so every single thing that is done is going to have an effect on you and I's pocketbook. Because what's happening now is, yes, they want the gangs out. They want MS-13 out. They want the gangs from Venezuela out. Yes, everybody agrees on that. But we all know, whether maybe we realize it or not, we all know people who are here illegally, came in through the amnesty program, but never showed up for an appointment, overstayed visas, whole bunch of different ways. And I'm not just talking people from Asia or Africa or Central and South America. Some of the report says there's over 500,000 European and Canadians here too that have done that. But we want Trump and his people to get rid of those other aliens. Not, okay, I will be stereotypic right here, just using, okay, we want our Jose to be untouched because we know Jose and Maria. They're great people. We've seen them, or we shop at their store. They're really hardworking. Their kids go to school. Our Jose and Maria are not like those other aliens. Leave Jose and Maria and their family alone. Or we know these people from Afghanistan, great people, leave them alone. Africans, leave them alone. Go after the other ones. Or, you know, I want my house re-sheetrocked inside. Don't touch Manuel, who's a great sheetrocker, and he does it for half price to going rate. Nope, those guys. I can tell you that where I live, right next door in some of the houses there, a couple of white vans came up, and they were out of state, and they were Central American people. And they were there. They did a lot of sheetrocking. They did a lot of repairs in the house, and they disappeared. And then once they got all that stuff disappeared, some of the local people came in, were doing the finishing up work. I've seen it when they came and did the roofing earlier the year. So we use illegals to save us money or put more money in our pocket We don't use illegals to save our customers money. We use illegals to enhance our profit. So we can say, yes, I like Manuel. He's a really good friend. No, Manuel is not a really good friend. Like the guy I was talked about last week down in Florida. He goes, hey, I'm a Trump supporter. Someone ratted me out and they came and stopped my vehicle and took all my guys away. You know, they're really friends. We've grown up. We've got this bond and everything. No, they're just saying that to get over the manipulation, what they're doing. Well, you know what? You know how it is down here in the Keys. It's really hard to hire people. So I'm going to hire these people. I'm going to give them jobs so they can take care of their families. And, oh yeah, by the way, it allows me to put more money in my pocket. Okay? So food costs are going to go up. Donald Trump says, you know what? Yeah, maybe we'll stop raiding hotels and farms and dairies. You know how it is. Where else are they going to get their workers? So there's a fight going back and forth in the White House. And so, sir, you want us to get 3,000 a day, and the only way we can get 3,000 a day, excuse me, is go to those places. But, you know, those are some of my biggest backers and everything. So, basically what I read this morning, it's back on. They're going back to farmers. They're going back to dairies. And they're getting ready to go to hotels and stuff. Well, what's happening is, again, I don't like the word use Hispanic, because a lot of people that work in hospitality areas are not all Hispanic. There's Caribbean people, there's Indian people, there's African people. Whatever the local economy can maximize their profit, they will use. But now, the people are not showing up. Southern California, they're having problems. A lot of Hispanics are not showing up and going shopping anymore. DoorDash and other companies, wait, we were counting on all these people, especially in New York and the big cities. A lot of them would be illegal aliens, but we're not going to check. Bingo. Who cares? Every time they deliver, it's ching-ching for us. So, again, if it's going to do it, if you're going to say, we want this done, there's going to be costs. There's going to be loss of services. There's going to be loss of tax revenues and stuff. Yeah, I wrote a letter to the editor of the King Sentinel months ago stating what all this stuff was going to happen, but that was never published. But I guess they did not want it to happen, but it is. For example, ICE has launched a massive expansion of detention space. The agency has added more than 10,000 new beds nationwide to hold migrants through fast-track federal contracts. Additionally, ICE is also reopening shuttle prisons in Leavenworth, Kansas, Newark, New Jersey, California City, California, and Dilley, Connecticut, bringing online over 10,000 new detention beds. The one of the largest reopened facilities is Leavenworth, Kansas, and that has over 1,000 beds. One that was previously described by a federal judge as an absolute hellhole. Okay. So what's happening in a big roundabout circle? Here it is. The federal government is going and saying, Trump, Steve Miller, ICE, we want these people out. Okay, so the people, some are just getting up and leaving. Other people are not coming at all. Others are not working. Well, a lot of the people who have been here for a long time, before the 4 years ago, before Biden, they said there was 12 to 13 million illegals here. A lot of them were law-abiding citizens working because the 1986 immigration law said, if you do this, you work, you pay your taxes, you can apply for citizenship. And so if you didn't have a Social Security number, you were given another number, you pay your taxes, and when you pay your taxes, you're also paying Social Security and Medicaid. So, and a lot of other ones who were working, they also had bogus Social Security cards. And they were using those Social Security numbers to work. But even when they were using those bogus Social Security numbers to work, they were still paying Social Security. I can go on to MyHeritage website, and I can look up my father, and I can look up my mother, and I look at my grandmother. I can go into the Social Security dead files and get their Social Security numbers. And if I use those and if I found a way I sold those Social Security numbers to someone who was legal so they could work, because, oh yeah, no big deal, Social Security, that still meant that the person that employed them or the company employed them paid into Social Security. That person that was working here illegally using my dead father's Social Security number was still paying into Social Security. Well, as the number of immigrants who are actually working is going down, the amount of money that Social Security is collecting is going down. The amount of money that's going into Medicaid is going down. And so you go, hey, what's the big deal? Yeah, what is the big deal? Social Security is going to be there, so what? So what? Less money goes into Social Security. Because one of the things says that in 2025, it appears that they will have more immigrants outflow from the United States than inflow to the United States. Big dent in the economy, big dent in taxation, whole bunch of stuff. But as we transition to less people working, less people putting money into Social Security, less businesses putting into Social Security, well, every year the Social Security Trust Fund has to come up with a report. Well, here it is. The Social Security annual report came out on Wednesday. The 4 trustees, Treasury Secretary, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Labor Secretary, and Social Security Commissioner. And there are 2 other positions, but they haven't been, by President, haven't been filled for over a decade. Okay? They all came out and says, boy, are we screwed. And these are all Trump's people. And they have a habit of looking really, really on the bright side of the sun instead of the dark side of the moon. And they're going, prompt legislative action to address the looming insolvency. Okay. Well, President Biden signed a bill that was passed by both sides of the House and hiked Social Security benefits for 3 million retirees. Okay, here's a catch. There's a lot of people that work for state and local governments that don't pay into Social Security. So, for example, I could be a police officer or fireman. Hey, I get a pension, and I get a good pension. Used to be 20, now it's 20 years, it's 55. I didn't have to pay into Social Security. And so, then if I retire at 55 and I work for 10 years, I qualify for Social Security, I used to get a reduced payment. It's kind of like, oh, I didn't have to pay for 30 years a penny into Social Security. And so, for example, if I'm making $50,000 a year for 30 years, that's like $100,000 that I didn't have to pay into Social Security and Medicaid. And so what the federal government goes is, well, you know what? Now that you qualify for Social Security, you're going to get a reduced level of that Social Security. You're going to get because you haven't been paying all this money. And so for the 30 years that you weren't putting money in, we could not have invested that money. Okay? At 3%, that 100,000 would have grew to 200,000. So, but President Biden and Congress and everything says, we'll change that. So, bingo, there will be no reduction. So it's like police officers and teachers. When lawmakers voted to raise their benefits, projection at the time said the law would hasten the trust fund's depletion by at least 6 months. In addition, the trustees predict lower earning growth for workers over the next decade. So we're going to give all this money to people that spent most of their work time not paying into Social Security. Then we're taking all these immigrants, illegal immigrants, or even legal immigrants that are self-deporting, and they're not putting money into Social Security. And if you go like to CNBC, the guy from Amazon says, we're getting rid of a lot of people. We're doing AI. We don't need these people. Other places, yep, we're getting rid. Home Depot, not Home Depot, but Walmart's getting AI, getting rid of people. So these people they're getting rid of. Then the other one, AI is getting rid of a lot of white collar positions. One showed that for senior executives, a little bit more than 4% of the senior executive positions have disappeared in this decade. Over 5% of managers' positions have disappeared. When they disappear, the chances of getting a job that pays as well is slim. Now people are stuck in jobs. They can't go look for another place because they may not get that position. People are stuck. Now they can't get promoted. So AI is going to reduce employment. It's going to be reducing middle to high paying salary, white collar employment. You know, the ones that are still paying off their student debt, and they're saying, yes, I can accept the student debt because I'll get a good return on my investment. Oh, no. So what happens now? And then it goes and says, well, you know, you women, you don't like the fact that you only get 1.6 kids. You are now going to increase it to 1.9 kids. When you get rid of immigration, you reduce the number of children per women in the United States. Because why? If I'm immigrating into the United States and I'm a young lady, I want a baby so he or she can grow up in America, and hopefully I can stay with my baby who is an American citizen. Well, the fastest growth with children is in the non-white population. And going back, there's still people out there, there's still MAGA people and other ones who are really scared of what they call the great white replacement goal out there. No, it has nothing to do with it, but most of the time it's for people who want the best for their children. There's some women that stay in really horrible relationships just so they can give the children their best opportunity. And these American citizen women. Okay, so they said no. Well, that 1.6 to 1.9 was supposed to happen in 2040. Now they're saying 2050, which becomes a big crock because there's not going to be jobs, and there's not going to be all these white-collar jobs that can support having a family of four, house and a white picket fence. Which speaking on a condition not, a senior government report said that a crackdown on immigration, which generally harms Social Security bottom lines because immigrants pay more money into the program than they claim at benefits, might prevent the fertility rate from ever being realized. Historically, the immigration population has the higher fertility rate. That's what the a senior executive in the Social Security Administration says. Last year's report said Social Security would run out of cash flow at 2035 and Medicare 2036. That means they will no longer be taking in money to pay current bills, and they would have to start dipping. Okay, so if Congress does nothing, and now the fund is predicted to run out of money in 2033 or 2034, and Medicare hospital insurance fund will run out in 2033. If you don't have Medicare hospital insurance fund, a lot of local rural hospitals will have to close because they count on Medicare funding. Also, 2033, 8 years from now, what does that mean? In 8 years, 2033, if your Social Security check is $1,000 a month, it's going to drop down to $770 a month. Just think of it. $1,000 a month, you drop down to $770 a month. If you're getting $2,000 a month and just barely dragging by, what are you going to do on $1,540 a month? Okay, so, but does Congress and the president have the fortitude to go out and raise taxes to bring in more funding to Social Security? And here's another one, cost. Iran and Israel are going back and forth, shooting missiles at each other. The United States has been shooting a lot of missiles to help knock down as many as Iranian missiles as possible, or junta missiles. Does it cost? Okay, give me an example. The United States government, the Navy, in the last 15 months, fired 120 SM-2 missiles at $2.1 million each to destroy 120 drones that cost $1,000 to $2,000 each. It fired 80 missiles of SM-6, cost $3.9 to help out take some of the missiles that the juntas were shooting at the American ships or oil tankers or missiles that were coming in towards Israel. Okay. The United States has been using the new SM-3 missiles to knock out missiles from Iran, and they only cost $9.7 to $27.9. So basically $10 to $28 million each. The United States is running out of missiles. A retired Navy captain states that it will take years for the United States to replace the missiles that it's fired or has sold or given to Israel. The United States is now using the Sidewinder missile to go after the drones. Sidewinder only $420,000 after a $2,000 drone. You got the Sea Sparrow, $1.6 million, $2,000 drone. Those are some of the costs. So now we're looking at does the United States go in and drop the bunker busting bomb? A 30,000 pound bust the bunker bomb. Okay. That bomb, they have to drop 2. Okay. And they have to hit the same location if they have any hope of the hitting the place. And that's based on it being 300 feet underground. It's the mountains, and it could be kind of tough to do it. So there's a number of things. And it goes, the stealth bombers, which we used just recently against the Hunters in Yemen, and 300-pound bunker busting while striking Iran's nuclear site is difficult. Trump is calling for unconditional surrender. No, Iran is not going to unconditionally surrender to Israel or the United States. Okay. And so Israel wants the United States to come in to take out the fortress, but there's no guarantee the United States can take out the fortress. The other part is Iran has a whole bunch of missiles, and the United States and Israel are running out of the air defense anti-missile system. Okay, so bingo. So even if you need missiles for the Iron Dome, if you run out of missiles, more and more missiles are going to get through. Missiles are getting through into Israel. Okay? But the UN nuclear people said, you know what happened? Iran had about 930 pounds of 60%, almost rich enough to make 10 nuclear bombs, or more than enough to make dirty bombs, and that has disappeared. They have no idea where that is. So even if you destroy the missile or the nuclear facilities, 930 pounds of nuclear material floating around the world is bad. A pound of that in New York City can make 9/11 look like a scratch. And so, if I'm an Iranian and Donald Trump orders to bomb my country, good chances are I'm going to engage in a war that the United States spent 20 years in, spent trillions and trillions of dollars, and only made things worse. Afghanistan's not better. Syria's not better. Iraq is not better. Sudan is not better. Ethiopia is not better. Libya is not better. But a lot of generals got medals, and we, the American people, are paying the price. And we as a country don't want to live in fear. And so, and if you're wondering, well, that's not really going to cost as much. Well, 6 days ago, when Israel launched its first missile, gas at Cumberland Farms was $2.77. When I drove here today, it was $3.05, 28 cents a gallon. Irvin's up the road was $2.81. Yesterday it was $3.08, $27 a gallon. So if you have a truck and you put in 20 gallons, or you have an SUV and you put in 20 gallons today compared to 6 days ago, that's $5 extra that you just have to pay. $5 and $5 and $5 and $5. That's money. Which means if all this gas and diesel's going up, delivery costs and a whole bunch of other stuff are going to go up. You have less food products. You have less beef and other ones. The food prices are going to go up. It's going to be a vicious circle. So while the people at the high level are saying, oh, let's do this, let's bomb here, let's go here, let's get rid of these people, you can't do anything, or you shouldn't do anything in a vacuum. Yes, we have to contain certain things, but how much are you willing to contain before you go over a tipping point? If you don't know what your tipping point is, you don't execute. You got to play chess, not checkers. And I don't know what's going to happen tonight or the next day, but have a good weekend.